or a volume support breath. So those are the two types of breaths. What's the difference between an APV breath and a volume support breath? Who ends the breath, right? So if we have an APV breath that's ended by time, a volume support breath is ended by flow. That's it, but they're both volume targeted. So if I click ASV, what safety things do we have to have? I have to absolutely 100% have my patient's height incorrectly to use this mode.
Yes. Idea by the way.
This is the most pressure I'm going to allow for whatever tidal volume it picks based on what's going on with these lung mechanics. So if you want it to be able to go up to 40, you can do that. Your percent here replaces what? Rate, target tidal volume, and I time. If your patient has a fever, they would probably need to be starting a little bit higher here. Okay. If your patient is working, I usually go increase this as well to try to capture them, because it's the same principle as if you have APV. If you have somebody that's working really hard, what's it going to do? It's going to wean the pressure out from under them, and then you're going to see a lot of the whole point of this. One of the whole points of this mode is to get better patient synchrony. If you want to be successful with it, I think if you have an ARDS patient, you turn this down. If you have a COPD patient, you turn it up. Or retainer, I would say.
Can you explain why?
Yeah, so again, this mode looks at an expiratory time constant. So this is an ARDS type of profile. It's going to look at an, I'll just pull it up here. It's going to look at the expiratory time constant and say, how hard is it for this patient to exhale? And then it's going to pick its rate based on that. So if you have a retainer or somebody with a really long expiratory time constant, it's going to pick a shorter or a lower rate and a higher tidal volume to get that same minute ventilation. So right now, I like the monitor, which is only available, is only on the G5. But this is because it has the target, the tidal volume that ASV picked, the rate, and the I time, and then what the patient is doing breath by breath. And then this is their delta P, or driving pressure. You could think of it that way. Your P and so is your delta. So our driving pressure is right now less than 15.
Okay.
I'm happy.
I'm so good.
Is this something that you come in and the patient is dysynchronous with the vent, but they're not necessarily in
Weanable.
full-blown ARDS on 100% and 20 a peep or something? I think ASV is a mode to try, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And whatever, so if we were in, let's just say we were in APV, just to make it easy. Okay, this is the mode we're in. Your patient is breathing pretty heavily here. Okay. So now when we go to our patient, we've got our, we know that our height's incorrectly. And we look over, well, that's crazy. Let's just say this minute ventilation's 12. So when you go to ASV, you would want to look here until you got to 12. I don't even look at this. I don't even look at this dial, and then that's where I would start.
Got you. Just match it.
Match your minute ventilation that you are doing, or that you were doing when that patient was stable. Like if they're all over the place, just go back a few minutes or an hour or two when they weren't all over the place, and just match that minute ventilation.
One quick question. I think I remember a previous rep says, if they're on like the respiratory pressure here, if it's less than 8, we can, and the patient is extubatable, is the alert and awake, we can extubate them on
I mean,
ASV.
if I'm down to like in this 100% range right
nice.
now, and my patient is doing all spontaneous breaths,
Oh, yes.
like this, you're going to start seeing this come down. You can actually switch this lung out and see when all these things come down here, if your timer's up, to see if they're in minimal settings and how long they've been in.
Gotcha.
So as this gets down here, we should start seeing that happen. and it takes about a minute to calculate this RSBI. Once that's calculated, like I said, your time, there'll be a big green timer that pops up. If they're in that and you're on 100%, I mean, they're ready to extubate in my mind. My pressure support's less than 5. Again, if you wanted to trend it back and see what their pressures had been, you could. But this to me was always the most straightforward way.
I like how you showed the minute ventilation. You want to match that. Is there any number that people should be concerned about going above 170%, 200%?
No.
I didn't think so, because if you're matching their minute ventilation.
If you want to absolutely make sure they're in an SBT, this is 5 over 5. 25% is because 5 is the minimum pressure it's always going to give.
Huh. It's cool. It's
and now I mean, nobody's going to let me breathe at 1.8, or if they do, you know what I mean? Like, that's death. So you just know that, like, this is 5 over 5 is what the ventilator can never reach that target. So this would put them in 100%. If you wanted to do an SBT and ASV, that's how you do it.
Good. Sounds good.
And if you did that for an hour, you get back to 100%.
So one last question though. Would you recommend, my experience, I've seen patient above 12 of PEEP don't do well on ASV. Like people who have like severe restrictive lung disease. Would you recommend that with ASV?
Yeah, if you don't know where to go with rate and tidal volume, you can even do an ASV consult. Yeah, if you're restrictive.
There are high PEEP. I'm looking about like 12 to 14 of PEEP, really.
Remember, all this is doing is doing the ventilation part. So my PEEP can be 30 here.
Really?
You know, your PEEP can be whatever it's going to be in pressure control and APV.
So as long as you
your
match,
oxygenation is still going to be separate. The ASV part is basically
just ventilation.
It's just ventilation. That's
wow,
all
I don't know that. Okay.
You know, but instead of having a rate, tidal volume, and eye time, you have one knob that you dial up and down for CO2 control.
So basically, you increase your preset minute volume to whatever your previous minute volume was, and just put.
Yeah.
Okay,
if you're switching over. If I was starting somebody in ASV, I'd start around 100 to 110%.
Okay.
That's usually what just what I do.
Because some of the patients will async with the vent, and so would you recommend we switch them to ASV first before we paralyze them? Let's say they're on 10 or 12 of PEEP, but they still kind of.
If they're exhaling against the vent, you're getting turn flow sensor alarms, stuff like that. And the vent is basically saying, hey, your patient and vent aren't jiving, then 100% absolutely you can try ASV to see if it'll help your patient synchrony.
All right. I was worried about the PEEP and FL too.
Well, this is the problem. If you just did volume support or just pressure support, you no longer guarantee a minute ventilation. And as soon as that nurse said, you know what, we gotta sedate this patient. Well, we're taking care of so many patients and so many people it's hard to manage. Did the nurse and me coordinate on when we had a sedation vacation, when we didn't? This kind of takes some of that out. I mean, it's still not a silver bullet, but it will help with your patient synchrony, for sure.
We tried that in Villarica, and on a couple we were successful, but a couple it was just too late in their COVID ARDS. But say you had somebody that was not in synchrony with the vent, and their minute ventilation was, I don't know, pick a number. And their blood gas didn't look great. They were retaining, but they were just miserable, and that you were either going to have to sedate them or put them on ASV, and then you would just dial up your percentage to go above that minute ventilation to help meet their demand and get that CO2 down.
Yep.
Okay. So maybe they don't have to look, the minute ventilation could not be doing the job, but they look miserable. Switch them to ASV, crank it up even higher. Okay.
Yep. You can see if that'll capture them, and then you just. Again, it's like when you're in the moment there, you might take a lot of pressure and be like, I'm not comfortable with that, I got to dial it back down, or whatever the case may be. We got to sedate anyway. You can leave them in ASV and keep them sedated. Like, that's the beauty of the mode. And if you look at what ASV picks, you can probably tell what kind of patient they are, right? Like, this patient is this is a pretty normal looking patient.
What about different topic, but when you're looking at plateau pressure, some of the graphics were showing a plateau pressure that did not meet the plateau pressure when we used the tool and did the inspiratory hold.
So if we do an inspiratory hold here, and then we go back, We have 0 flow. If I saw this higher than my peak pressure, I know that my thing is erroneous. So it's not that. Is this measurement is wrong, or it's just not even in there?
Wait, say that again. I'm confused.
All right. So this is what you're doing, right? To
Right.
do your, you're saying that this number is not the same as this number.
Yes.
Okay. It just depends on why.
Okay.
If your patient, like I said, has effort in here and
Uh-huh.
it shoots your
Okay.
plateau pressure up, that
Okay.
I would take this number
Okay.
for sure. This is usually all this is if we get down here and we get a little bit of like a 0.1 second hold, it'll take that measurement.
Okay. Okay.
So if your flow is decelerating to 0, it's just taking that measurement, and that's what it's spitting out as a plateau.
because it
pressure.
seems better to use the tool and do the inspiratory hold, right?
Mhm.
See, that would be more accurate.
I think it's, or you could verify it, but
Okay.
but basically that is what this is doing.
Okay.
It is taking a measurement because we got to 0 flow on inspiration.
Okay.
So if we had a shorter eye time, a lot of times you'll see dashes there.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was. Okay. And that's because it hasn't. Okay.
It
there's
can't
no-
measure
yeah,
it, or if it may, the G5 may have a calculation. It may do least squares fitting too for plateau pressure.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up. But C3 for sure, it just if you get to 0 flow, that's when it gets a measurement.
Yeah. Okay. But if you want to do your inspiratory hold, you go to tools, you
Mhm.
do your inspiratory hold, and then you scroll until that is 0.
Well,
now you
so
have-
if we're 0 over here, I try to go to the end of inspiration
Okay.
and find that 0 right around there.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Gotcha.
That way, if there's any kind of minimal leak or something else that could be contributing to it, I'm going
Okay.
to get the most accurate plateau pressure I can get.
I like it. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, man.